Good morning, Friendship United Methodist Church. I'd like to welcome you on this 21st day of April 2024. My gospel selection this morning comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verses 1 through 21. Now, it's a small wonder that the image of a shepherd was frequently upon the lips of Jesus. It was part of his heritage and his culture. Abraham, the father of the nation, was the keeper of great flocks. Moses was tending the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro when God called him into service. David was a shepherd boy called in from the fields to be the king of Israel. The imagery of the shepherd was also imprinted upon the literature of the day. The 23rd Psalm is frequently referred to as the Shepherd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in the green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. When Isaiah spoke of the coming of the Messiah, he worded it by saying, "He will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will gather his lambs into his arms." Yes, the tradition of the shepherd was very much a part of the heritage of Jesus Christ. And this picture comes more clearly into focus in the New Testament. Jesus once told a story about a shepherd who had 100 sheep, but one of them went astray. And in our way of thinking, a 99% return on investment would be most desirable, but not this shepherd, not Jesus. He spoke about left the 99 to go in search of one lost sheep. That's what he would prefer. That's what he asked. And later, when Jesus was speaking to a throng of people, Mark tells us that he had compassion upon them because they were as sheep without a shepherd. Throughout the Judeo-Christian faith, then the image of the shepherd has been stamped upon our thinking. In our scripture text for this morning, Jesus again taps into the imagery when he refers to himself as what, James? The Good Shepherd, that's right. For a few moments this morning, I would like for us to examine together what he had in mind when he described himself thus. First, we have a shepherd that is a genuine shepherd. United Methodist pastor Reverend Larry Daniel, a well-known writer of civil rights novels, tells a story on himself. He says, "I will never forget when I got my wife's engagement ring. I had been saving up money from all of the marriages I had performed to buy an antique musket, an 1864 U.S. Springfield rifle. Oh, it was beautiful. Instead, I used my money to buy an engagement ring. Greater love hath no man than that, friends. But after I bought the ring, I said to the jeweler, 'Now be honest with me. The deal is made. I can't go back on it. Can you really tell the difference between a real 1-carat ring and some phony ring that I can buy off Shopper's Channel on TV?' And he said, 'Come around here and look at this. And I want to show you something.' And he put the light on the 2 rings, the one I had just bought and a phony diamond. Then he gave me his jeweler's eyeglasses. He said, 'Look at the cheap imitation and look at what you just bought.' And when I did, I was amazed. My ring sparkled. The counterfeit was dull and had no luster. Jesus said, "Now here are two shepherds, Anne. Outwardly there seems to be no difference. The skin of both are bronzed by the sun and weathered by the wind. They both carry a fleece to keep them warm at night. Both carry a shepherd's crook, but one is a genuine shepherd and the other is a counterfeit. One is a shepherd in the heart, and the other is a shepherd for hire. On an ordinary day, you could not tell them apart. But let trouble come, friends. You let trouble come. Let a pack of wolves appear, and then the difference becomes apparent. The counterfeit runs because it's the money is his interest. He has no ownership. But the real shepherd stays. Jesus said in our text, "I lay down my life for my sheep." Ed, that's what he said? Yeah. And that's the difference between the real shepherd and the counterfeit, friends. And here's the good news. I don't care how much trouble comes your way, the good shepherd will never leave your side. He will not desert you in times of trial. That is the news that will get you, the good news that will get you through the night, friends. That is the news that will enable you to keep your sanity. And second, I think the good shepherd knows his sheep. Sir George Adams Smith tells of being in the Holy Land many years ago, and he saw several different flocks of sheep huddled together at a watering hole. They all looked alike to him. It was simply a mass of white wool, and he wondered how the shepherds would ever separate them out. At the appropriate time, however, each shepherd gave his own unique call, and in an orderly fashion, the sheep divided. Perhaps that is what the Good Shepherd meant when he said, "I know my sheep, and my sheep know me." Bishop Edward Tullis used to tell a story about a particular census taker who went to a family to gather information. This was in the mountains. Family was quite poor. I'm not going to say it was West Virginia. It was just in the mountains, okay? And he asked the mother how many dependents she had. And she began, "Well, there's Rosalie and Billy and Luella and our dog Willie." And the census taker interrupted her and said, "No, ma'am, that is not necessary. I just need humans." "Oh," she said, "well, there's Rosalie and Billy and Luella." And rather exasperated, the census taker interrupted her again and said, "No, ma'am, you don't seem to understand. I don't need their names. I just need numbers." And the mother innocently replied, "But I don't know them by numbers. I only know them by names." And it strikes me as rather comforting that the great creator of all things, the great creator of the cosmos, knows my name. Wow. Little Johnny, I love little Johnny's stories. Little Johnny says his mom heard him praying one night, "Our Father who art in heaven, how do you know my name?" He knows my situation, guys. God knows our situation. He knows your situation. And I know there are those who scoff at that the great prime mover of the universe could also be a caring shepherd. But I simply look to the words of the Good Shepherd. I know my sheep. I know my sheep. Now, sometime back, a murder took place in a small Mississippi town, and the neighbors who were interviewed of the news were all shocked. "It seems impossible to us that the husband did it," they all said. "We knew these people. He couldn't do that. We knew what was going on in their lives." You see, that's the difference between God and us. God knows. We only think we know, Samantha. Jesus said, My sheep knows me. My sheep know me. And the question is, are we attuned to God's special whisper? I suppose all of us have, most of us anyway, have seen the painting done in the 1930s of a dog cocking his head, at an old RCA photograph, a phonograph. And the name of the painting is The Master's Voice. And I know that in my life, I've not always recognized my Master's voice. I've tried, oh yes, but I've not always recognized that. I've been too busy, too preoccupied, too self-centered, and sometimes, frankly, I'm afraid to hear his voice. I'm afraid what he'll be saying to me, or where he wants me to go, or what he wants me to do. For I know that he will say what I might not want to hear. But I know that it's important for me to hear, once again, the words of the Good Shepherd. I know my sheep, and they know me. Be obedient. Be obedient, friends. The Good Shepherd also includes other sheep. Jesus said, I have other sheep too, and they are not of this fold. I must bring them in also. Now here's the question for this morning. What's an oxymoron? An oxymoron is a combination of contradictory terms, seemingly canceling each other out. For example, bittersweet, jumbo shrimp, authentic reproduction, House Ethics Committee. Let me give you another. Good Shepherd. Certainly to the modern ear, there is nothing contradictory about that until we learn that in the ancient world, shepherding was not really considered the romantic, humble occupation that we think of it as we think of it today. Shepherds were looked upon as gypsies are looked upon in some parts of Europe today. They were dirty thieves. Some despised were shepherds. So despised were the shepherds that under Jewish law, a shepherd could not be a witness in a trial. They were notorious liars. And just when we think we've got the shepherds figured out, Jesus throws us for a loop and uses the term Good Shepherd. You see, in God's flock, James, there are going to be many people that you did not expect to be there. That's right. I might be one of them, We never know. There are some people who are not of my fold, and of course he's speaking of the Gentiles, and I must bring them in too. This shepherd is an inclusive shepherd. In John Drinkwater's historical drama, Abraham Lincoln, a woman says to Mr. Lincoln, Mr. President, have you heard the good news? In the latest battle, we suffered 800 casualties, but the enemy suffered 2,700. How splendid! Splendid, replied Lincoln, splendid? That 3,500 souls are lost? Oh, Mr. President, she said, you must not look at it that way. Only 800 of them counted. Replies Lincoln, Madam, the world is much bigger than your heart. We have a good shepherd, friends, who is inclusive. Very inclusive. Remember that. The good shepherd also sacrifices. Jesus worded it this way. The shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. Lay down your life for a worthless animal? That hardly seems reasonable, does it? That is, until we remember that we are the sheep that he's talking about. We are the worthless ones. It's called atonement. the shedding of one's blood on behalf of another who doesn't deserve it. Nicholas Berdyaev, who abandoned Marxism for Christianity, insisted that it was not a theology or history, not the church that caused his conversion. He was present at a concentration camp in Nazi Germany when the Nazis were killing Jews in the gas chambers. One distraught mother, whose first name was Maria, saw that the officer in charge, Berdyaev, was really only interested in numbers, not names, not people, only numbers. So without a single word, Maria was pulled aside by an unknown woman who took her place and went into the gas chamber. So powerful was that image that it turned Berdyaev toward Christ, who sacrificed his life for all humanity. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. You don't have a life worth living for if you don't have a cause worth dying for. You don't have a life worth living for if you don't have a cause worth dying for. If we are to follow the shepherding model as laid down by Christ, then sacrifice must be a part of our faith. It means that the church must lay down her life for a worthless and undeserving society. It's not enough that we simply remain sheep. Christ is calling us into the role of a shepherd. Jesus asked Simon Peter one day, "Peter, do you love me?" "Lord," he said, "you know that I do love you." Then came the reply, "Feed my sheep." If we are to be faithful, friends, there's no alternative. No alternative. Feed my sheep. That's what we're called to do as disciples today. Feed my sheep. They may not be like us. We might not like their lifestyle, but we're called to feed them. We're called to be disciples for Jesus Christ. Go forth as disciples to make disciples. God bless and amen.